Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most popular horror game franchises of all time, and there's multiple reasons for that. The visuals, the jump scares, and of course, the sound design. However, one aspect of the sound design that is often overlooked has to be the music. And even if the music is not used to convey horror, I think that Five Nights at Freddy's music and soundtrack has done wonders in setting the mood for the games they are in, and are some of the best examples on how to make an amazing soundtrack. So in this video, I'm going to cover all the music in Five Nights at Freddy's and what makes it work so well. I'll be covering all examples of music from the 7 mainline FNAF games, Five Nights at Freddy's World and Security Breach. I will only be talking about the music present in the games, and I won't be touching on any of the sound design aspects unless they go hand in hand with the music. So with that, be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get into this video. Now, before I start talking about the tracks themselves and what makes them work, I first want to give a brief overview on music theory, as it will make some of the points I explain later on in the video a bit easier to understand. If you don't care and want to skip ahead, or you already understand music theory, feel free to skip to this timestamp on screen here. Don't worry, I'll make this as concise and easy to understand as possible. So, in music theory, there are 6 main concepts of music: pitch, tone color, duration, structure, texture, and dynamics. Pitch refers to the actual note being played, and how it works with the other notes in the song, as well as the highness and lowness of a note, and any respective harmonies involved. In terms of referring to pitch, we can refer to the individual note being played, which in music, there are 12 possible notes this could be. Depending on the order of notes, a piece will be in a certain range of notes, which is called a scale, which is a series of 8 notes that work together to create a certain sound that works in harmony with each other. The starting note of this scale is referred to as a key. For example, if the first note in a scale is C, then the piece will be in the key of C. Now there are 2 types of scales, the major scale and the minor scale. Well, there are others, but we won't be discussing that in this video. Major scales are defined by their uplifting tones and generally sound happy. Minor scales, on the other hand, are defined by a sad sounding tone. There are different sub-modes within these two, but for this video, there's no reason to go over these. What is important is to define the difference between major and minor. Major pieces are typically happy and are what majority of FNAF World soundtrack is. A perfect example of a major piece is the main theme from Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, which is in the key of C major. An example of a minor piece would be the Sister Location TV show theme, titled The Immortal and the Restless, which is in the key of C minor. Anyways, that's all you need to know about pitch for this video. Now, let's move on to duration. Duration is referring to the rhythm and length of a piece and a sound itself. This is mainly referring to tempo, how fast or slow a piece is, and time signature, which is basically how you would count a section. 99% of music is in 4/4, which is 4 beats over 4 bars. Think smashing windshields. Another common time signature is 3/4, which is 3 beats over 4 bars. Think crumbling dreams. Structure is the actual order of sections within a piece. Think of verses and choruses. You can also look at it as an A section and B section, which would be the majority of Five Nights at Freddy's music. Let's look at the Security Breach main theme again. Here's the A section, and here's the B section. Texture is the layer of sounds in a piece, or how many instruments are playing at a time. So as you add instruments, a piece may sound more full or intense compared to one with less instruments. But this is literally just how many instruments are playing. Dynamics is referring to how a note is played, whether a note is played aggressively or softly, and how this affects the overall vibe of a piece. For example, listen to the drums on these 3 pieces. you should get the idea now. And finally, we have tone color, which basically just refers to how an instrument or piece actually sounds. Which, in other words, basically view this concept as just describing how things actually sound to someone who can't hear. And that's pretty much all you will need to know about music theory. Feel free to rewatch this if you need a refresher, but I will be referring to these throughout the rest of the video, so just keep that in mind. But anyways, with that explanation out of the way, let's finally begin with Five Nights at Freddy's 1. So FNAF 1 being the game that started it all, started it off with a bang, and that's partly thanks to the original title music. While this isn't actually made by Scott or someone Scott hired, just like most of the first few games and their sounds, this still works exceptionally well at setting the mood for this game. We have the swirling ambient notes with hints of static, creating this feeling of unknown, and this paired with the twitching Freddy is absolutely horrifying and super iconic. Now, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 may not have any official soundtrack, but there are two instances of music within FNAF 1's gameplay. The first is the tune titled 1810 Circus Organ. This tune randomly plays throughout the night no matter where you are, and it's meant to be just a fun little jingle that plays. However, because of the horror game setting and the haunted children's pizzeria environment, this music becomes a form of juxtaposition. Being that the piece is in major, while you are dealing with this dark, swirling ambience, this juxtaposition works really well. It's amazing how much the atmosphere can affect a piece of music, and it's used super effectively here in order to create tension and fear in the player. The last piece of music found in Five Nights at Freddy's 1 is probably the most famous piece in Five Nights at Freddy's music ever, and that is Freddy's music box tune, which is pretty well known to be the Toreador March from Carmen by Georges Bizet. I'm probably pronouncing that completely wrong, but I don't care. A piece in A flat major, which is basically describing a victory in bullfighting, which, when taken at face value, insinuates that Freddy is mocking the player with a victory song, which works extremely well as a tune of inevitable doom for the player. Also, fun fact, a lot of people think that Freddy actually sings the song himself, however he doesn't do this until Security Breach. So yeah, it's just a chimey music box, which again creates juxtaposition between the soft childish melody and the horrific nightmare scenario. This music also plays after you complete the game itself, which turns this victory march from being a moment of defeat to a moment of triumph. Now, despite me saying that the Toreador March was the last piece of music in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, there's actually one more bit of music left to cover, and that's the victory chimes of 6 AM. Composed of only 8 notes, once again in a major key, this music perfectly contrasts the eerie tone of the gameplay with the gratitude of the nightmare being over, until the next night. I won't mention this again until Five Nights at Freddy's 4, since this same tune is present in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2, and 3. But with that, we have covered all the music in Five Nights at Freddy's 1. While it doesn't have as much music as some of the other games, and probably doesn't have even as much variety, it still does a good job at creating tension in its atmosphere, and juxtaposing the horror scenario with the children's pizzeria, which is a theme that this game heavily capitalizes on. The idea of these lovable children's mascots suddenly becoming broken from their chains from a force beyond our understanding, and that they are coming for you specifically. A very effective experience. However, as we know, there is more than just this game. So let's move on to Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is not much different than Five Nights at Freddy's 1 in terms of music, although despite that, I think that Five Nights at Freddy's 2 ups the quality in terms of music, at least in my opinion. While I don't like FNAF 2 in terms of gameplay, which is what I look for the most when I'm actually playing again, I won't deny that this game does a really good job with its theme and atmosphere of chaos. This is first seen with the title screen music. While again, it's just a clip from a piece by someone else and I can't play it otherwise I'll get copyrighted, it does a great job for setting up the mood for the game up ahead. However, once we actually get into the game, there's one instance of music, and that's the Puppet's music box, which is a music box variation of the piece My Grandfather's Clock. This piece is in a major key, and once again, creates the juxtaposition between the horrific scenario and the children's restaurant. However, this time, you are actually wanting to hear this sound, as it indicates that the music box is wound and that the puppet isn't out of their box. In fact, it would be more startling if suddenly you heard this. The Pop Goes the Weasel tune is meant to be a super happy jingle, but in this scenario, it is turned into an absolutely terrifying piece of tension. Both My Grandfather's Clock and Pop Goes the Weasel effectively scares the player with the same means that FNAF 1 did with the Toreador March, and while it may not be as iconic, it sure is very close to being so. The last piece of music present in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is the ending music, which is a piece called this, which translates to The Bells, once again being a victory march, and honestly, I would say it's way more effective than Five Nights at Freddy's 1 version. Overall, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is much the same as Five Nights at Freddy's 1 in terms of music, but personally I think it did a much better job in utilising its music to create tension, and add to the theme of chaos, as the soft music box sound becomes a lifeline in an otherwise static-filled and alarm-blowing situation. But now for my personal favourite of the original games, Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 has some of my favourite ambience music from the entire series, and in my opinion has the most effective use of music from the entire series, but I'll get to that soon. Starting with the title music, I think this title music works pretty well, although I won't deny it's not my favourite. However, I do think that it does a great job of setting up the player for the theme of this game. This glitchy sounding tune at the dark screen really sells exactly what you are in store for. Although it's not my favourite track, I do think it still has the same musically effective title music from the original games, and besides maybe one game in all of Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, most of this game's music comes from the various secret mini-games, but it also has the most musical ambience during the actual night. The ambience is super creepy and spooky, which gives off the vibes an environment of a horror-like attraction should give. It's definitely the loudest of the game so far in terms of music, but it ends up working to its favour based on the style of the game. While FNAF 2 had a ton of noise that played from silence to get the player on edge and prone to getting overwhelmed, FNAF 3's ambience is more present and actually fades out the closer Springtrap gets to the office, replacing the low creepy ambience with this high-pitched G note with a hint of an F sharp note that fades in, which in music is a clash, is literally the note that's right next to it, creating this creepy ambience that feels off even though it's just one or two notes. But now let's talk about the actual music tracks in the game, which are the various good ending mini-games, which actually all have unique pieces, although they are all very similar with the same static-filled music box making it sound like it was recorded using a wax cylinder from 100 years ago, which gives it this creepy, unsettling vibe, while also making you feel like you're watching a lost VHS tape or playing an old arcade game. The BB Air Adventure music is super upbeat and feels like a carnival minigame, which makes sense considering the type minigame aesthetic of this level. The Mangle Quest has a similar vibe, but is overall more dynamic with more notes being played at higher intensity. The Chica's Party music is a lot more fast paced and high pitched, with mainly just the high melody music box creating this sense of urgency that the other minigames don't have, making you want to speed through this one as fast as possible. The Stage 01 minigame has this more peaceful music box theme, showcasing the steps you have taken to get this far, and the Glitch minigame represents this as well. These two are the most sad so far, representing the sad events that took place and how as you uncover more and more of what happened at these places, you get this sense of pure sadness that continues on to Happiest Day, one of the most soft and sad pieces of music in Five Nights at Freddy's. However, it also feels like a victory march, as you are finally at the end of your journey and you are finally able to give these kids the happiest day in which they so desire. Now, the good ending piece, Don't Go, is one of my favourite piano pieces in all of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I'm so mad that this is copyrighted. What you're hearing right now is the remastered version, which I understand why they changed the vibe since this game was no longer the official ending, but my god, I wish Don't Go wasn't copyrighted, because it is one of the most beautiful pieces ever. It's so beautifully tragic, and the music alongside the visual of the empty animatronic heads creates this feeling of completion and reflection, allowing you to see just how tragic the whole situation is, and how fulfilling it was to help these children become free. And in my opinion, the FNAF 3 good ending is the best ending in any FNAF game, just because of this music. While the FNAF 6 Connection Terminated ending is good, and trust me, we will get to that later, I personally find this ending works so much better, and there's a couple of reasons for that, but I'll only highlight the reasons I have relating to the music in this video as to not waste too much time. Basically, I think that the sad piano music works better as a tragic ending to the franchise, which is where I believe the focus should be. At this point, the story was about these 5 dead children who never got to experience the wonders of life as it was ripped away from them so violently, and to see the children finally get the peace they deserve is so satisfying, and fills you with way more emotion than Connection Terminated. Don't get me wrong, Connection Terminated is good, but I feel like that ending has focus on the wrong elements of the story. But that's just my opinion. Overall, while Five Nights at Freddy's 3 may not have much music overall in the actual game itself, where it does shine through its secrets and minigames with one of the most beautiful endings in the entire franchise, I have to say I think Five Nights at Freddy's 3 has the more effective use of music so far. But let's press forward and see what else we can find, because even though this game was meant to be the end of the franchise, it obviously didn't last. FNAF 4 barely has any music, and this was entirely by choice, as this entire game is based around sound. The only music really present in this game is the title screen music and the low rumbling double bass ambience that plays throughout the night. Otherwise, there is basically no music to be found here. However, I think the lack of music here actually works wonders in allowing FNAF 4 to stand out from the pack, and allows sound to really drive the horror. Since this game takes place in a child's bedroom rather than a children's pizzeria or any other establishment, you are only really left with the sounds that you expect to find in a child's bedroom. However, there is one exception, and that being the only real piece of music in the game itself, the grandfather clock chimes that play at the start of the night, which plays a similar tune to what plays when you win a night, which emphasizes that something is inherently wrong about our situation. Speaking of winning the night, we no longer get the hopeful chimes, but instead get a harsh sounding alarm clock. Once again, FNAF 4 basically has no music, and probably has the least amount of music from any of these games, but I think that the music it does have actually doesn't work that well. The grandfather clock chimes feel really out of place, but it's not terrible. It's hard to judge this game based on the music when there is so little to discuss, and personally I think FNAF 4 has the weakest title screen music from the original Five Nights at Freddy's games. But anyways, let's move on from a game that has no music to one that has the most music. Now, FNAF World is a huge departure from the Five Nights at Freddy's series as a whole, literally being an RPG adventure game rather than a horror game. Now, considering that the previous FNAF games were a horror game and barely had any music at all, you would think that this game has an absolutely terrible soundtrack, but this is far from the truth. This is the first FNAF game to actually have a soundtrack, and it's really good. So let's get into that. Starting from the title screen with a song called One for the Road, we get this super high intensity string piece with timpani drums playing accents on the chords, crashing cymbals that enter and give the song a super thrilling vibe as the piece starts to build. During this joyful intro, a marimba enters playing a super melodic and happy tune, which you'll soon find is a very common theme in this game. The melody and rhythm are extremely joyous and happy with an adventurous tune to it. We then get to the main section, featuring a drum kit which plays a pretty simple beat, which gets you into this super excited mood and really drives the piece forward. This title screen really emphasizes the mystery and the joyful adventure that you are about to embark on, and it does a really good job at getting you excited to play the game. This song is the reason I'm always in a great mood whenever I play this game, and I think it absolutely does the best job at setting up the theme of the actual game, which in my mind I would say this makes this the best title screen music from any FNAF game. Our next track is the music that plays whenever you talk to Fredbear, titled Running Light, which is a super chill but upbeat jingle focusing on the marimba melody with very soft accents defining the rhythm, which continues the trend of feeling like you're about to embark on this amazing adventure. And as this is one of the most repeated tracks in the entire game, it really does well in defining when you're about to move on to a new section and when the difficulty might start to ramp up a little bit. The first world we enter has a very relaxed theme, credited to the arpeggio-based chord progression. Arpeggios are basically melodic phrases usually revolving around a chord, which is what backs up the main melody. This world is super green and colourful, but also very relaxed, and the music complements this perfectly, which all gets thrown out the window when you encounter an enemy. The FNAF World battle music, titled Adventure Ahead, is once again a super upbeat and energetic piece that works really well as the battle music, while also keeping that uplifting adventurous vibe throughout, and when the battle ends, you get this super chill jingle that feels like a finalized version of the battle music, with less instruments and softer dynamics, letting the piece almost fade away as you re-enter the actual world. Now, one of the most effective pieces of music in this game would have to be the sub-world, where you glitch through different layers to traverse the world. There are 3 layers to the subworld, and they all work amazingly to create a very mysterious and actually creepy experience. Starting with the first layer, this piece is actually very low in pitch. Unlike the previous pieces, it's actually in the key of minor. And actually, this is the same key as the FNAF World movie, moving from the A note to the major 7th note, which means that this piece is in the key of harmonic minor, which is a variation of the minor scale that tends to give off a more creepy and unsettling vibe, which is very common in horror scores. But yeah, this piece is very similar to the beginning of the FNAF movie theme. But anyways, the progression from the A minor chord to the G sharp major chord works so well, as it feels like a smooth transition between chords due to the third of the chord being exactly the same in both. However, because of the first and fifth moving down a semitone, which in music terms means one note difference, it creates a similarity, which doesn't quite feel right, and gives off a feeling of unease, which is why it normally works so well for horror. It feels so close to being right, but it's not, and that creates tension, which is why this piece feels so uneasy and kinda creepy. Then, as you move down levels, the piece becomes more distorted and slower, making it harder to distinguish any actual note being played. And the third level especially, you feel as if you are in danger. And in the context of the game, you are warned multiple times while traveling through this section that you should never go down more than 3 levels. As the music gets more and more distorted as you go further down, you suddenly feel trapped into making a decision, since if you mess up and go further than you need to, it's on you. Honestly, this is some of my favourite use of music in Five Nights at Freddy's World. It's just so effective, and it's some of the creepiest as well. But anyways, let's move on to the rest of the game. The next music I want to cover is the boss battle music, which again is playing on the accents and strings, being more orchestral compared to the other pieces, which also makes the boss fights feel more epic compared to the normal fights. There's also the unique battle theme of finding a new character, which is the more chill version of the boss battle music, which also works as the middle ground for battles, keeping the orchestral music in the style of the main battle music. Now, the only other music really present in Five Nights at Freddy's World is the different themes for the worlds. The Dusting Fields music is the soft flute and cello music with a lot of breathing in the background, which really emphasizes the cold environment that you are in as you feel the drop in both temperature and tone, as the Dusting Fields is really bare in comparison to the other worlds, with snow and dead trees, as well as these very weirdly placed Ferris wheel near the back. The instruments are played so softly that you can barely tell what's being played, which makes this track work more like ambience than music. Next we have the cave music, which plays when you enter any of the caves in the various worlds, which I think works super well. The dripping water sound effects with the almost western style melody and marching band snare drum really makes this one feel mysterious and creepy while also being weirdly charming. This piece is also in minor but has a few notes that make it major sounding, which contrasts the creepy atmosphere. This in turn makes the entire piece feel mysterious since there isn't a consistent sound to the piece. Now we move on to the Lily Gear Lake theme, which is this super soft, sparkly piece featuring harps and other melodic instruments. And unlike other tracks, this song has pretty much no tempo or rhythm, which gives it a super calm vibe, especially with the calm water environment, making this area almost hypnotizing and relaxing. The Blackyard 2 music is very reliant on the heartbeat rhythm and the low double bass to carry this one. It creates a very dark and creepy atmosphere, almost as if the horror section of the game, which of course it's meant to be. Like Dusting Fields, this track is very minimalistic and more focusing on being ambient than an actual musical track. The Pinwheel Funhouse has some of the most chill vibes like the first world, and this one is definitely a fan favorite. So instead of me talking about this, I'm actually going to give a few YouTuber friends of mine a chance to talk about this track, since I don't think I will give it the justice it deserves.
FNAF World, in my opinion, the best FNAF game, for obviously a multitude of different reasons, not just characters, gameplay, how it looks, but one of the biggest reasons FNAF World is my favorite game and beloved by so many people is the music of it. The music of FNAF World is so unlike any other Five Nights at Freddy's game. Well, most Five Nights at Freddy's games don't even really have music, but more a scary ambience. A little bit of humming in FNAF 1, FNAF 2, that iconic hallway, like little jarring noise whenever an animatronic shows up, the beeps and stress that comes in FNAF 3, and only the silent breathing and chimes of clocks in FNAF 4. When FNAF World came out, it was very, very different, unlike any other FNAF game. It was a mystical RPG, which was actually a lot in Scott's realm because some of the first games he made were RPGs, but the music of it was unlike anything in any other previous games, being composed by Leon Riskin. And to say that Leon Riskin, in my opinion, made music as impactful as C418's Minecraft soundtrack would almost be an understatement. The music in FNAF World is beautiful, it's graceful, it's so much more than just video game music, at least to me. It takes me back to such a beautiful time, especially when I was younger, of simpler times, thinking of happy memories, being in my childhood home with young friends and going to grade school. FNAF World music is so iconic to me personally, I can recognize it instantly from just the first couple seconds. But out of all the FNAF World music, nothing even comes close to Pinwheel Circus. Of course, there are many beautiful tracks, even the cut track of Icy Caves from FNAF World is particularly beautiful. But the music of Pinwheel Circus is unlike anything I've ever heard. Even though I've heard the song probably thousands of times at this point, it doesn't feel to give me goosebumps all over my skin like I'm transcending when I listen to the song. It gives me little goose pimples all over. Ooh, little goose pimples. The way the track flows, almost like a sad little organ in the background, but this bumpy little music that just goes up and down in such a slow manner gives it not a high, upbeat, crazy circus vibe, but more like a relaxed little in-town carnival that you go to at 2 p.m. with your friends. It's such a beautiful track, it's almost hard to describe it, and this track means so much more to me than just in a circus-themed area in a FNAF RPG game. It gives me so many happy memories of when I was younger, when things were simpler, and when, honestly, everything seemed a lot brighter. And that's what this song impacts. A nice, bright circus with green, red, purple, and yellow-colored tents, fun, fair enemies that you battle throughout this area, and being the final area of FNAF World, where you eventually encounter the boss. This song can be seen as almost a send-off to everything. A beautiful composition of notes, almost combining some of the original areas, such as the Overworld and Lily Gear Lake. It's honestly a beautiful track, really. I know many people listen to the song, and some people do have more favorite FNAF songs. I can understand Lily Gear Lake or Fazbear Hills being your favorite FNAF World tracks, or even Scott Cawthon's boss fight theme song. But this song for me does something else. Out of all the FNAF World music, this is a track I find myself listening to again and again, sometimes for no particular reason. Whenever I'm really stressed out and need to calm down, this song can always help me do that. Or whenever I'm honestly just having a bad day, this song does nothing but just put a smile on my face. And honestly, if the world was ending and I had just one song to listen to for even 30 seconds, there would be no other song I would want to choose but this one. Honestly, it kind of inspires me to get up and go take a walk outside, so I think I'm gonna go walk around outside now. Oh man, sure is nice outside, especially listening to Pinwheel Funhouse. Such a beautiful song. You know, I could lay here in the road all day listening to Pinwheel Funhouse. Wait, what the heck? Is a car? There is a car? It's going to hit me?
Yo, what's good? It's FloopLooops here. I'm here to talk real quick about my favorite FNAF OST in the entire franchise. For me, it would just have to be Travel 2, or the Pinwheel Circus or whatever it's called. I just personally love the sound and flow of the soundtrack so much. I think it suits the theme of FNAF World very well, especially the Pinwheel Circus. I think they nailed the theme perfectly with it. I don't know, I personally love it. I may not be the best at explaining it, but yeah, that's all I have to say really. Thanks for having me on. Enjoy the rest of the video. Bye bye.
Now, there are other musical tracks like the Halloween theme and all the mini games in there. However, I think it's safe to say they all pretty much serve the exact same purpose, and it's not like the Halloween stuff really affects the main game. So to end off FNAF World, I want to talk about my personal favourite track in all of Five Nights at Freddy's world, Stone Cold. Now, why does Stone Cold work so well, and why is it my favourite? Well, for starters, it goes insanely hard, but besides that, there's more reason why it works. For starters, it's very different from anything else, which makes sense considering that this is the music for the final boss, which is Scott Cawthon, so I mean, I can't blame it. However, that's not what makes this music work so unbelievably well, although it is pretty fitting for that reason alone. But what makes this work is the fight setting. Scott himself is this bright blue monster, but the background is like this electrical black background of flashes of purple and blue, which makes you feel like you were in the realm of the gods, which makes this fight all the more intense and fun. The driving beat and bass riff works wonders in creating a grooving beat, and the high-pitched melody that comes in as the piece moves through is really good at keeping the momentum going. God, this piece is just such a bop through and through, and it's just so fun, which is why it's gotta be my favorite. I mean, it looks like we're in a goddamn nightclub. So now that we have covered all of the FNAF World tracks, what makes this game's music work so well? Well, considering the style of the game, being an adventure RPG, and how the music tends to be some adventurous, mysterious, or just downright epic, I would say it does an amazing job. It adds tension when appropriate, and manages to match the theme of each world to the music perfectly. However, this game is definitely the black sheep of FNAF family, considering it's the only one that doesn't fall under being a horror game, at least not yet. So let's move on to the first FNAF game that's primarily horror that has a musical soundtrack. While Sister Location may not be my favourite game in the series, I won't deny that the music present in this game is incredible, and are all absolute bangers, and all work wonders for a horror game. This game is the first of the horror games to really use the music during its gameplay, and also has some actual soundtracks that play during certain nights. Being the first of the horror FNAF games to have an actual original soundtrack, there are a lot of really cool ideas and elements implemented into the actual music itself, starting with this amazing title screen music. This piece hits from the start with its epic piano note, strata chord style progressions, and mechanically sounding rhythms, with drill sounds and scraping playing along the creepy notes. The stutter effect cuts the notes off at very slight rhythms, which creates a different feel to say a single note being played. It's like the difference between a single rhythm guitar chord and a multiple rhythm strumming pattern. However, I'll be the first to admit that the soundtrack of this game is a bit misleading, and the title screen shows this. Music is usually used in order to enhance the game and give the game a certain feel, and this music implies that we're about to experience a super high-tech and advanced game with multiple twists and turns, which isn't really what Sister Location is, now is it? It's not bombastic or loud. In fact, most of Sister Location is very quiet, and the music we do hear is usually to imply the end of a night or to set the mood for a final boss battle. We'll get to that later. However, despite that, the music in this game is still very effective. At the start of the night, we get this super soft jingle elevator music, which has some nice juxtaposition. As well as super upbeat in front of nature, it implies that you are about to go through hell. The hand unit will, during one night, play a casual bongos tune, which is used to just create a bit of humour between the night sections. The only other music really in this game is both the end of night music, which is just a soft jingle with firework explosions, which is just a celebratory tune like every other one that we've seen so far, although it's definitely more fitting with the themes of Sister Location's music, and it actually complements the in-between night cutscenes with the vampire TV show you watch. This piece is in minor, which gives a sad dramatic feel, which is just being a nice little tune to fit the TV soap opera. However, while looking at music, the best example I could find in Sister Location is this. Now, I know that you were probably expecting Watch Your 6 or the custom night music, and trust me, we will get to that. Personally, I think that Crumbling Dreams is easily the best music in all of Sister Location. The Crumbling Dreams piece is the music that plays during the Balloa minigame on night 2, where if you hear this music, you need to stop moving or else Balloa will kill you. Now, what makes this piece work so well? Well, for starters, this piece is just awesome. We have this soft music box idea like the puppet from Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which both ties this game to that one and also creates a juxtaposition, since in FNAF 2, hearing the normal music box means that you are safe, while in this game, hearing it means that you are on your way to getting killed. This piece is also in minor compared to the original music box, which is in a major key, which makes the piece a bit more sad and creepy considering about how much longer this piece is compared to the original music box. The length also provides a sense of progression as you go through the section, as you won't be listening to the exact same loop on repeat unless you really take your time. The quiet ambience in the room also really makes this piece shine, as music box chimes are relatively quiet in most music, which makes any change in volume stand out and catch your ear even more. And this all works together to make Crumbling Dreams super effective as both an ambient piece and a tool for horror. Now, despite my praise, I know that majority of the people here will want me to talk about probably the most well-known piece of music in this game, and that is the ended boss fight music. Watch Your 6 is the boss battle music for this game, and oh my god, it's awesome. Now, for starters, the idea of a boss battle in Five Nights at Freddy's is super awesome, and this ended boss fight is easily the best part of the base game. Although I will definitely say that getting here is a huge pain in the fucking ass. But regardless, this is still super cool. This piece is overall just another piece of ambience, but unlike the original game, this ambience is more of a musical spectacle. Almost like you are in a musical or a TV show rather than just being trapped in a haunted pizzeria. The juxtaposition between the protagonist watching his show on the TV to suddenly being trapped in what seems like a TV show is actually super awesome. It's almost poetic. Now, there's one more piece in this game, and that's the custom night music, but I'm gonna let my friend talk about that one.
The Forbidden Nocturne is my favorite FNAF song, which is funny because it's from my least favorite FNAF game. At least the ones made by Scott Cawthon, that is. The Forbidden Nocturne can't even be heard during the normal game. It's exclusive to Sister Location's Custom Night mode. And while I absolutely adore Sister Location's Custom Night, it's not what we're here to discuss. The Forbidden Nocturne is a beautifully elegant and somber song that I love a lot. The entire song makes me feel like my life is on a ticking clock, and any autonomy I had in deciding when that clock stops no longer belongs to me. This song kind of feels like the animatronics are taunting you. While yes, it's somber and elegant, it's also very playful with its merry-go-round-like melody. Maybe it's the fact that you're hearing Freddy scream, "Ready or not, here I come!" and seeing Bonnet cheerfully slide across your screen while she attempts to kill you that's doing it for me. Not to mention how inherently cheerful and childlike the Funtime designs are compared to anything we had previously, with the exception of the toy animatronics from FNAF 2. With how literally everything, with the exception of Yendo, is smiling at you, yet simultaneously trying to kill you, I can't help but feel this song really sells the uncanny feeling the animatronics used to give off. This music really helps to sell the feeling that, yeah, they have a cheerful smile on their face, but that's not the emotion their actions convey. And with this creepy yet oddly playful melody playing as you survive the animatronics and patiently waiting for things to happen as you conserve battery, knowing damn well they're closing in on you second by second, it turns the custom night into a game of musical chairs. When the music stops, aka you die, the game is over. The way this song dances around your head from ear to ear screams Ballora is not even that far off from Ballora's actual theme, which goes by the name of Crumbling Sweet dreams. Have a listen. Throughout the entire song, there's this beautifully deep hum that never goes away, and every time the other instruments calm down, drawing more attention to its existence, I can't help but think it's very reminiscent of a facility's air conditioning. And seeing as how we're very, very deep underground, and oxygen wouldn't just flow down here out of nowhere, there's probably more to that than meets the eye. The final reason I love this song is because it's just really good to use as background music. When you slow it down, it sounds good. When you pitch it down, it sounds good. When used normally, it still sounds good. I listen to it when I edit, it's my starting soon music for my Twitch streams, and it's a very good background for explaining stuff over. I may hate Sister Location, but its custom night is probably the best in the series, with its only competition being UCN depending on personal preferences. And I guarantee that its gorgeous soundtrack has something to do with that. Every second I survive with this song in the background makes me feel like a fly trapped in a spider's web. I don't exactly know where exactly the animatronics are or how close they are to killing me, but I know that I'm not safe, and that is a gorgeous and beautiful thing to feel in a horror game, especially in a series like FNAF where horror usually takes a backseat nowadays.
And with that, we have covered all of FNAF Sister Location's music. For the first soundtrack made for an actual horror game, this one is masterful and has some of my personal favourites, and considering this is my least favourite FNAF game, you know that me praising this game means nothing but good things for its music. But anyways, let's move on to the next game, which has a lot more tracks for us to cover. Pizza Sim has some of the most iconic music in all of Five Nights at Freddy's, and most of it is in the different minigames that you can play in the Tycoon section of the game. However, that's not all the music from the game, so let's talk about it. Now, for those who don't know, when you first load up the game, you are presented with a minigame where you get to make a pizza and fill a bunch of hungry children. Obviously, for those who don't know, this game was meant to be disguised as just a minigame rather than a full-on release, and I think this minigame did a very good job at doing that, both through the minigame itself and also the music. The piece is pretty goofy, all things considered, but it serves its purpose really well. The piece is of course in major, just like most pieces, and the chord progression follows what we would call a 1-5 feel. Basically, in music there are 8 notes labelled 1 to 7, since the 8th note is just the same note as 1 but in a higher octave. So a 1-5 progression is the 1 note and then the 5 note. This is very commonly found in country music and bluegrass music and can give off of a boppy vibe, and can also make a piece come off as goofy, especially if played with a slight swing like in this piece here. However, this music only plays for a little bit before... Now, the salvage section does have a slight musical feel to it, and it's technically one of the pieces. Not that there's much to talk about. It's just a very effective ominous drone that serves as the perfect backdrop to all the other noises you experience during these minigames, like Henry's voice and the various audio prompts, which are all really disturbing but hold no musical value besides being creepy and unsettling. And now we have Forgotten Sunday Show, which is the music that plays over hand unit and is probably one of the most recognisable pieces and one of the most reused pieces too. This music is very uplifting and almost epic in nature. It has the same filter effect present in most of Sister Location, which helps the tutorial vibe of the clip a lot more. It basically acts like commercial music, which I think really sells the vibe. Now, I'm not going to talk about the rest of the music in the Tycoon section in detail, since there are so many different tracks and they all pretty much serve the exact same purpose, and that's just being music in the various minigames. However, I will mention a few exceptions, the main one being smashing windshields from the Midnight Murderous minigame. This piece is reminiscent of the secret levels in the Mario games, with a more upbeat driving rhythm section, and this is enforced by the Hit the Road track chord progression, basically being a progression of the 1 chord, minor 7 chord, 6th and 5th chord. This beat immediately catches the player's ears since it's very different and more minor compared to the other pieces. This definitely is one of the more effective pieces of music in Pizza Sim and definitely adds to the mystery of Midnight Modus as well. Although one piece I definitely think I should mention is Alchemist's Theory, the song that is played during the Security Puppet minigame. It's honestly one of my favourites from this game. This piece is in C major and is overall a happy piece. However, the way the notes sound make the piece sound really sad and unsettling, as if something is slightly off, which as you play, makes you feel like something bad is about to happen, which eventually... Yeah. This music is very effective at making the player feel uncomfortable and full of dread, and in my opinion is the most effective music from the lore minigames. However, if we're talking about the most effective piece of music in Pizzeria Simulator, then I think everyone knows exactly what piece I'm about to talk about.
Connection terminated.
This piece, titled Nowhere to Run, is the final piece of music in Pizzeria Simulator, and probably one of, if not the most effective piece of music in all of FNAF Freddy's. While personally I don't find this piece to be as effective as the FNAF 3 good ending music, I won't deny that this piece is also super effective and probably would be agreed upon as the best music in FNAF Freddy's. Now, where to start? For starters, compared to the rest of Pizzeria Simulator, this piece is probably one of the more orchestral pieces in FNAF Freddy's. The bass rhythm resembles a heartbeat, with a low double bass and high piano notes creating a creepy and unsettling feel at the beginning, since we aren't sure who the person we are listening to is, and it really emphasizes the surprise and shock of this speech. As the piece rises in intensity with the heat of the building and we watch the animatronics burn, we get this sense of satisfaction, knowing that our hard work paid off, and then it cuts to black. This section is absolutely amazing, and while I don't think that this ending as a whole tops FNAF 3, which I'll definitely cover in another video if you want me to, I think it does an amazing job ending the game in essence this era of FNAF Freddy's. And with that, we have covered all the music from Pizzeria Simulator, and we can now move on to our very last game that we are discussing today, and that is Security Breach. Now, our last game is one that definitely does not have a good reputation, but I would say a universally agreed upon plus for this game is its music and soundtrack. So let's start with the title screen. Now this title screen music honestly isn't that good. Like in terms of setting up the experience of the game, it's completely wrong and off. While I get the vibe it's going for, the creepy music box version of the main Security Breach theme, it just doesn't work as title screen music for me. And while this version definitely has a more effective use later on in the game, it's not here. But speaking of the main Security Breach theme, God is it awesome! Once again, this piece is in C major, and unlike the last one, this piece is upbeat and fits an 80s styles rock piece with electric guitars, electric organ, and rock drums. It has a driving rhythm that works as a hype song to get a crowd excited for a show and a game. Honestly, I think if this game started with this cutscene and this music before starting the game and having the title screen music play after, it would actually have been way more effective, since we start out with this epic cutscene, see Freddy glitch out, and then we get to see the title screen of the unsettling music. But although I think this would have made a world of difference, it is what it is. Now, because this video is already so goddamn long, I won't talk about all the mini pieces of music such as Chica's guitar solo or the Mini Music Man stuff because it doesn't really add too much to the game. This game has a lot of intense chase music, but it doesn't really do anything since this game, in my opinion, while having some of the best music in the series, probably handles it the worst. However, there are a few exceptions, starting with the daycare music. The daycare music is this bopping and goofy sounding major piece which fits the theme of a children's care really well. In fact, the best way to describe this music is fun. In fact, most of this game's music is fun. The Fazza Blast minigame music, which has a driving rhythm for a laser tag experience, the Gator Swamp music, which I mean, just works as swamp music, and probably my favorite, the DJ Music Man music. In fact, let's keep talking about this piece because I love it so goddamn much. The DJ Music Man boss fight music starts with this epic 4/4 drum beat with electric guitars chugging a very simple metal sounding riff, and by God does it work. Once you add the electric keyboard on top, you get this super epic yet slightly unsettling piece that makes you look over your shoulder constantly. And once you get to the end of the section and see DJ Music Man crawling out from the massive hole of death in the wall, and the music reaches its climax with loud siren sounding keyboard notes as blasting, it just ties the entire piece together and makes it one of the most tense moments from the entire game. However, the place that I feel Security Breach shines the most is actually its subtler moments. More and foremost, the Princess Quest games. The music that plays during the gameplay is the soft melodic piece that shifts in and out of major keys, kind of swapping back between. It's very chromatic and uses most of its notes in the scale throughout the piece, but it manages to flow together to create this really intimate piece that feels very different from the rest of the game. You're not in the Pizzaplex, you're in another world. It feels like you've pulled back the curtain and are now diving deeper and deeper into the belly of the beast. In fact, I would argue that there's more dread felt through this minigame than actually playing the fucking game, which explains why I feel that this game does the worst job with its music overall. Truth be told, I really love the Princess Quest music, and it makes sense why every theorist loves this piece too. It really gets you thinking and almost feels like the FNAF World flipside music when you start entering glitch objects. This piece is just a joy to listen to, and it fits FNAF so well. It's a shame it was attached to this game. Now, why do I think that Security Breach's soundtrack is not very good? Well, on their own, every piece is wonderful and are actually really great musical tracks. However, in the context of the game, it feels like the music is hard carrying this game. In the other games, the music does what it's supposed to, give the stuff that you're trying to do more punch by having actual music underneath it to set the tone. Epic music for a FNAF World battle, creepy music for a scary section, and etc. moving on. However, with Security Breach, a lot of the horror comes in the form of the music, which is weird because if you take the music away, all of a sudden, everything becomes a fucking joke. Like for example, the moon level in the daycare where you need to turn off the generators. The music is this deep swelling, almost reminiscent of FNAF 4, and it's very creepy. However, when you look at what is actually going on in the level, you learn that it's a barely functioning AI attempting to track you, and it's not really scary at all. It's entirely the music that's carrying the actual horror of the level, and in my opinion, that's a bit lazy. FNAF 4's ambience works well because the actual game itself is scary. Even without the ambience, the level is creepy and unsettling, while in the moon section, the actual level is not that scary. Now, ironically, the scariest levels in Security Breach in my opinion is actually the Freddy repair levels, and there's absolutely no music to be heard during these sections, and the horror comes in being afraid that you didn't hear something correctly, and the uncomfortable feeling of silence. Overall, FNAF Security Breach has a bunch of really cool moments like the intro cutscene and the Princess Quest, and the ambience for the locations is solid, but when it comes to the actual horror of this game and attempting to set up a consistent theme for this game, it unfortunately falls the most short. And to me, I feel this is a trend that the future games have been going through with its music, such as Into the Pit, where a lot of what's actually scary in that game is the music. However, I definitely think that Into the Pit is a bit better and a scarier game, but that's for another video. And with that, we have gone over every single FNAF game and analysed what makes its music work for those games. Well, not everyone, but the ones I feel work the best, and Security Breach. Overall, FNAF music is one of, if not the most recognised aspect of these games now. Even though I don't feel like they fit the games they're in much anymore, there's no denying that up until Security Breach, Scott was an expert at making music actually work for the sections he was trying to show, whether it was a scary moment, a happy moment, a sad moment, or an epic finale. And one thing that Scott definitely knows is that a little silence goes a long way. Now, this video is very different to anything I've ever done on this channel, and if you've enjoyed it and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing. This video was actually a ton of fun to make, mainly because no one else is really talking about FNAF's music, and I love music, so this was really fun to do. But I want to give a huge thank you to Puggo's Pizzeria, FloopLooops, and Alternatum, as well as Corey from Dual Process Theory, for helping me with this video. It wouldn't have happened without them. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.